Yeah. Okay. Maybe he's going. It's quite noisy out there. Okay, so this is good. You have another question? Yeah.
What is Rabbi our outlook meant to be on the? But then I don't know if someone asked this already about with the giyus with the bachrim, and also with the haflik, and what should be our response to it, through haflik, and what is Rabbi's outlook on the hafganas that everyone's doing? So both two questions under the same.
So I'll tell you, in all questions of social policy, political policy, I think the situation is extremely complex, with lots and lots of secondary consequences to what you do, and I certainly am not in control of all the consequences to have an opinion of my own. But I have a methodology. Methodology is, number one, don't make your own decision. That's just dumb, in addition to being evil, but it's dumb. You wouldn't make your own decision in a medical matter. You wouldn't make a decision in fixing your car. You wouldn't make your own decision in buying a house. You'd get experts to advise you. But here, saving the country, or saving the Jewish people, or saving the Torah, which is certainly much simpler than medicine, much simpler than fixing your car. Oh, there, I know, and I go, and I do, and I think that's just irrational, and I think and certainly usher. The one question that every Jew can be asked and should be ready to answer is, who told you so? Who told you so? You're following someone who's a recognized scholar and a recognized tzaddik, Bakasha. I have no complaints. That's all you can ask for somebody. All you can ask is take direction from a responsible authority. Once you've done that, I'm not going to say that the authority is wrong. Even if I follow a different authority, I'm not going to say the other authority is wrong. When you get to Shamayim, they ask you, why did you do that? Your strongest answer is, I did it because so-and-so told me to do it, and he's an acceptable authority. And then there's nothing to say. Then you're perfectly blameless. But if it's, like one Yeshivat Ohr asked the other, where's the action today? Sorry, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that. And it's, from the history of Yiddishkeit, it is acceptable to have contradictory opinions among the great scholars. So these who have demonstrations may be following a great scholar, and those who condemn the demonstrations may be following a great scholar. And since the Kodesh Baruch Hu didn't give us a Sanhedrin, he arranged that we shouldn't have a Sanhedrin. He wants both opinions to be in existence, and he wants people to follow both opinions without deciding who has to be right. I'll give you another example. Many say that the Rishonim, the medieval commentators and authorities, had Siyata Shemaya, had the help of heaven, or Ruach HaKodesh, Divine Spirit. The question then is, how do you explain when they contradict one another? By name. There's a lot of invented contradiction. He said A, and he said B. They must disagree. Maybe not. Like Gemara says, he said one thing that's correct, he said another thing that's correct. But when the number two says the number one is wrong, like the Ramban was saying, Rashi, lo mukhvar, it's not appropriate what he said. Or like he said about the Rambam, his mouth should eat dirt about a certain thing that he said. So it's very hard to say that they're both abstractly right. So how could you say they both had Siyata D'Shmaya? It means the Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted both opinions in the world. He had Siyata D'Shmaya to express that opinion because he wants that to be something that people hear about and talk about. And the same thing with the other one. He wants the world to have in it contradictory opinions. It's a better world when it has in it contradictory opinions. When it doesn't, with respect to this issue. So you don't have to say that if it's Siyata D'Shmaya, it has to obviously be true. That depends upon what HaKadosh Baruch Hu's purposes are. So I think that's. But I can't. I'm not going to take a position. Should there be demonstrations? Shouldn't there be demonstrations of the sort? The authorities that I follow say they should not. But
like personally, on the matzah, like what's going on, how we meant to, what should be our reaction? Even not Afghana. I'm saying that was a different question. What should be our reaction to, like, at the end of the day, they're taking in people that are learning to the jail because they're just learning. Like we got to a point in 2026 where they're putting people in the jail because saying what should be our, what's like.
It's a very, very complex issue. There's a difference of opinion as to who should go to the army to defend the country. there's a question of whether those who aren't learning should go to the army, and if a very large percentage of those who aren't learning are not going to the army, then maybe there's a fault that has to be corrected, and then maybe the people who are correcting the fault aren't doing it right, but they're not off the planet. I'm not saying I believe in this, but this is a way of thinking about it, that if you have somebody who's a responsible authority who tells you that's a way of thinking about it, even if he tells you it's the right way to think about it, he can say that, but you can't say that. You could say, I follow him, and my friend who follows somebody else, I have no complaints against him. You know, I used to put it this way. According to the Sephardi halacha of what is kosher meat, much of Ashkenazi meat is not kosher. Their minimum standard is what we call glatt, roughly. And there's a lot of kosher meat that isn't glatt. Does that mean the Sephardim say to the Ashkenazim, you're going to Gehenna? You're going to suffer because you're already eating treif meat? No. Their posek, their medieval poskim and their contemporary poskim have a stricter standard, and the Ashkenazim have a little more lenient standard, and each one is following a recognized authority. That being the case, he's blameless. You can't say anything to him that can criticize him. And a smart person says, I'm following my authority, you're following your authority, we're both brothers in doing the best we can to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the right attitude about that. Yeah, this is Q&A, guys, so if something's on your mind, now's the time to pull it up.
I understand when the Navis were in action, we were able to go up and say, what's my purpose in life? And with that being gone, not necessarily the purpose, but maybe the specific Tikun we're here to correct. I've heard the Gilgalim in mind that there's potential a specific Tikun we're here to perfect. And I'm curious, without the Navi, is there a good process to go through to try and identify that?
Okay, I think there are two things to say here. First of all, let me tell you a story. This occurred to me about, I guess it was 20 years ago. Those were the days when video links were hot stuff, and we had 3 cities link up. There was one of us in each of the 3 cities, and there was also Dr. Brian, the one in Miami who takes people back to past lives. Thank you very much. I have a problem with names. Brian something or other. He takes people back to past lives. And the whole subject was transmigration of souls and resurrection, and from a religious point of view and from his point of view of what the psychology that he did. And he talked about people who were suffering various maladies, and he took them back. For example, a woman was having choking fits, and she took her back to when her soul was in the generation of the flood, and on that occasion she drowned, and she's now reliving that drowning, and by bringing her back there, was able to free her from the symptoms here, and she stopped having those choking fits. And in each of the cities there was an audience. So someone in one of these cities asked, Doctor, should I come to you so that you can take me back to my prior life so I'll know what I'm here for, what I should be working on, what I need to correct? So Rabbi Becher and I, once from Ohr Somayach, we both held our breaths. He's got 1,000 people listening to him. He could drum a lot of business. He said, your life is not really going in the right direction. Well, you come to me, pay me a good salary, and then I'll take you back, and then, and we don't necessarily pledge allegiance to what he's doing. To his great credit, he said, no, Hashem will not abandon you. He will not take advantage of your ignorance. He can lead you into the job that you have to do without your knowing he's doing that, without you ever identifying it. And if you don't learn it and choose it consciously, he can manage it for you, and he won't hold you responsible since he took away prophecy. And you don't have a prophecy to ask, so then he won't hold that against you. I thought that was a very, first of all, true and very honest and courageous thing for him to say. I was very, very, I felt it was worthy of honoring that answer. Now, there are certain resources we do have, short of prophecy. there are great people in the generation, and they are great in terms of their superb service of Hashem in all dimensions, and their encyclopedic Torah knowledge. And when you go to such a person, he can tell you something that expresses the help that Hashem gives him to help people, so as to give them the direction that they need. And then you should make use of that resource. In fact, the Nesiv Shalom talked about Emunat Chachamim. Emunah means to believe in, or believe in, which means to trust. Believe in the sages of the generations. And he asked, what does it mean to believe in them? Does it mean to believe that they're great scholars? Don't believe in that. Talk to them, quiz them, listen to their lectures and see whether they have high scholarship or not. Do you have to believe in them that they have good character traits? Interact with them. See how they interact with people and see what they do. And you yourself can see whether they have good character traits or not. That's not called Emunas Chachamim. Emunas Chachamim is this. These people are responsible for a group of Jews. A group of Jews takes them as their leader, as their advisor, as their decider. And Hashem gives special help to people in that position. Because they've taken responsibility for a group of Jews, Hashem gives them special assistance that you can't see and that you can't test. So this is where the Gemara says to take this on as your trust to them, because the tradition says that they will have special help. So if that's the case, if you go to such a person and ask him, then like I said before, when you make your decision and you listen to what he says and act on it, when later you are quizzed, why did you do that? And you say, he told me to, you are perfectly justified. You did the responsible thing. And don't let somebody tell you, well, if you're only taking orders, you're not living a life. You're not standing on your own 2 feet. You're not really a fully autonomous, independent adult. They don't say that about taxes. They don't say that about your medicine. They don't say that about fixing your car. Only about moral decisions. That's all. And religious decisions and self-development decisions. Now, the world is a little better than it was when I started lecturing. From the last 20 years, there's a new profession. It's called being a life coach. Maybe you've heard of that? What is that about? Why is there such a profession? Well, maybe because left to your own intuitions, your decisions won't be that good. Not good for you, not good for the people around you. Maybe 10 years from now you'll say, oh, why did I do that? I was so young. I was so inexperienced. I had seen so little of the world. I hadn't read so much. Nobody reads anything anymore. I hadn't seen so many educational videos. And I was 20, now I'm 30. I certainly wish I hadn't done that. Well, there's a way to avoid that. When you're 20, ask somebody who's 40 and maybe you'll avoid it. So that's the idea of accepting direction. The most responsible personal decision that you make on your own is to seek out an authority to tell you what to do. That's the responsible. That's where I'm living my own life and making my own decisions. My decision is to ask somebody who knows better than I, tell them to make the decision what to do. So I think that you can make use of those criteria. But you're right to point out that we don't have prophecy. So it's going to be much less certain than prophecy. But when you do that, then later you are blameless because you did everything that you could possibly do. Yeah, what's noch? Well, I'll tell you something about last week's Parsha. It's very interesting, the spies. The spies were sent to do a job. In the Hebrew language, there are 3 different words for spy. One is latur, or lasur, the Ashkenazi pronunciation, but it's written with a suf, not with a samach or a sin. Latur is one, and another one's l'ragel, and another one's lachpor. And they have different connotations as to what the job is supposed to be. The ragel is typically a military operation. You send somebody in to see the enemy and to decide where they're strong and where they're weak and what they're supposed to do. When Joshua sent out spies before the conquest of the land of Israel, he chose 2 men and he sent them, and they're called meraglim. Ragel. In this story of the spies we read on Shabbos, the verb is only latur, never l'ragel. The Malbim explains that, and I just saw this morning, Rav Hirsch agrees, that their job was to evaluate the quality of the land. It had nothing to do with a military assignment. And he has several proofs for it. First of all, there's one from each tribe. Each one is a leader of his tribe. Why would you use them for a military assignment? They're the most talented, the most clever, most innovative in military matters. Joshua didn't do that. He didn't have one from each tribe. Neither one was a Nasi. Why? And then one of the assignments was bring back samples of the local fruit. Gee, that doesn't sound like a conquest plan. See how big the grapes are? How big the pomegranates are? And then he keeps talking about how good the land is. If it's good land or bad land, you got to conquer them, and they have fortified cities and so forth and so on. Whatever it may. Are the people strong? That means, does the land grow strong people? Or does it grow weak people? Are the cities fortified? If the cities are fortified, then the inhabitants are afraid. If the inhabitants are afraid, they're not strong. So it doesn't grow strong people. It's a good symptom it doesn't grow strong people. The whole operation was an operation of evaluating the land. Rashi himself says it word for word. He says, you're talking about spies. I told you the land was good. And you want to go and see whether it's good or not? I'm going to give you a chance to make a mistake. I'm going to make it hard for you. Rashi describes the project as evaluating the land. The idea is that each tribe will have a representative who will come back after the tribes had different character, different economic emphases. So the one who's interested in using seafaring will say there's a good seashore, it's a lot fine, it's easy, there's places for the boats, and harvest, it's a place to fish. And to the other one who wants farming, so there are plains, and the plains are fertile. Each one will say, I went to a place that's good for us. And then the people in the tribe will accept it, and they'll be happy to accept the evaluation. When the spies come back, and you read what they say about the land, everything they say is true, except for one word. They say that there were giants there. There were giants there. And they say the cities are fortified. That's true, there was fortified. And the land is very fertile, flowing with milk and honey. Yes. And they brought back samples of the fruit. And this nation lives here, this nation lives there, and this nation lives there. Everything they said was true. But they added one word. And that word is ephes. Ephes means roughly zero. And the connotation is, but it's worth nothing to us because we can't conquer it. But in the first speech, that's all they say. Ephes. That colors the report. They made it into a military report. They weren't supposed to do that. And they succeeded in demoralizing the people to the point where they rebelled against going into the land. Now, when you put a little more detail into it, as the Malbim does actually, and Rashi hints at it, in the book of Deuteronomy, in Dvarim, where it describes the same incident, it adds some information. The impetus for this event was a gathering of the people across the categories, old and young, scholars and non-scholars. All different kinds of people came in a mass demanding meraglim. They were demanding a military operation. And Moses said to them, a military operation, a military surveillance, information about how to conquer, you think this is going to be done by natural means? You're making a big mistake. It's going to be all miraculous. If you want to send people to check out the quality of the land, that we could do. But send it, a military operation is not supposed to be a military operation. So they asked for meraglim, and they got to Tarim. And at the end, the Tarim fell into the trap of making a military assessment. And that was the terrible problem that was created. Okay? That's a summary from the point of view of these commentators as to what the episode of the spies was. Now, at the very end of the Parsha, you have the Parsha of Tzitzis. You know the Parshios were divided up by the rabbis. Not all places had the same divisions. In In one area, they finish the Torah once every 3 years, not once every year. But I don't know when this was done, when this particular division was made. Whoever made it obviously had the story of the spies and the Parsha of Tzitzis in one Parsha. And one key to why is because that very same verb, which is used in the spy story to talk about a mission of evaluation, that very same verb is used in the Parsha of Tzitzis. Lo sasuru achrei levavchem. So suru there is spelled with tough. Doesn't mean to turn aside. That would be with a samach. It means don't evaluate. Don't evaluate. So now we have to understand what's going on in the Parsha of Tzitzis, that it tells you not to evaluate. So it says don't evaluate after your heart and after your eyes. That means the heart and the eyes are presenting you with certain information and certain stimuli, and you are likely to respond to that stimulus, trusting your eyes and your heart to reveal to you things that are really appropriate. Don't do that. Don't trust them. They're not trustworthy. Now, Chazal have one way of reading this verse, and if I'm getting it right, Rashi has a different way of reading it. It says, don't go after your heart and after your eyes. Chazal see that as two separate propositions. Your heart will lead you in one direction, could lead you to heresy, and your eyes could lead you to sexual crimes. Don't follow them in either direction. That's of course valid. Rashi sees it as a chain. It's that the eye sees, and because the eye sees, the heart desires, and then because the heart desires, the person evaluates. So it's not two separate causes with two separate outcomes. It's a chain. Eye to heart to action. And you're being told, don't follow that either. Don't follow that, don't trust that. The eye and the heart represent the natural human reactions without being informed by what the Torah wants. And of course, you have to measure everything against what the Torah wants. So the general rule is you have to seek, and I'll put it a gloss on this of mine, eye and heart are internal. That's what's called subjective. And if you're going to make a decision on the basis of your subjectivity, like Diet Coke trumpeted this for the whole world, if it feels good, do it. Excuse me, that's advice for a dog. If it feels good, do it. What about your brain? The brain doesn't count? Shouldn't think about it? Investigate it? Evaluate it? Think of alternatives? If it feels good, do it. That's self-ruin. You won't live to 16 if you do that. So these are all subjective, and you have to measure it against the objective standard of the Torah. Now, having said all of that, there's a very interesting verse in this 27th chapter of Psalms, the Dovid Hashem Ori, which we say in the month of El, the month of Tishrei. We say it, 100 times. A very interesting verse. The verse says, L'cha omar libi bakshu fanai. That's a very tough verse. L'cha, to you, omar libi, my heart said, to you, my heart said, seek out my face. Who's talking? Who's talking to who? Hashem is talking to us, and Hashem is referring to his heart and telling us what his heart told him. That would be bizarre. There's nothing like that kind of description in, I think, in the whole 1,000 pages of Tanakh. I'm talking to Hashem, but then my heart said to him. Rashi there says two words which give an entirely different perspective. The word in Hebrew, lecha, can mean b'shvilcha b'shlichuscha. On your behalf, on your agency, my heart spoke to me. So here's how it goes. The Jew is speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, Ribbon Shalom, my heart's telling me something. And I recognize that when my heart tells me this, my heart is acting as your agent to bring me your message. So, here's what my heart is telling me in your name as your message. What's the message? Now here's the quotation. the message from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bakshu Fonai, seek out my face. That's a true message. So sometimes the heart isn't distorting. Sometimes the heart isn't hallucinating. Sometimes the heart is a faithful shliach, agent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to bring you his message. So the heart isn't completely rejected, completely unreliable, and to be discarded. It depends upon the circumstances. It depends upon what other functions are acting in its favor, and that's something which is very difficult for you to put together. But when your orientation, like in Elul, when you're waiting for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and you're anticipating the days of awe, which are really awesome, and then Sukkot afterwards, and you're anticipating that, and you're in a very, I would say, directed mood towards finding what's really true and really important, that may be a time when your heart is more reliable. So that's the double message that you have in the Parsha about following after the evaluation of your eyes and your heart, and the dangers in following after the evaluation of eyes and your heart. Now, if you are 19, let's say, think back when you were 13. Do you now at 19 see that at 13 you made mistakes? I hope so. One of the things I always wanted to ask these people who are carrying a Palestinian flag from the river to the sea, aside from which river and which sea, which they don't know, I would like to ask such a person, when's the last time you changed your mind about anything? I think for many of them, they won't be able to remember a time because they don't change their minds. They just parrot phrases that excite them, make them feel important. They're not thoughtful people at all. But people who aren't caught up in that kind of craziness, you look back when you're 19, when you were 13, and say, oh my gosh, if I had known then what I know now, I certainly wouldn't have made those decisions. That's good. That means you grew in the last 6 years. You understand better now. You have better insight now. So that's part of, as I say, that's part of growing. Part of growing is knowing that you need to grow and knowing that you need input from other people in order to be able to grow. When you make use of those resources, then the conclusion that your heart comes to is much more trustworthy. That's one way to improve the results that you get, rather than simply, flying off on what strikes you as appropriate at the moment. I think intelligent people do this. Let's suppose you're planning a trip, and you're thinking, I would like to explore Switzerland. Should I go in the summer or the winter? That's a good question. And how do you figure it out? I like overcoats, so I'll go in the winter. I don't like overcoats, I'll go in the summer. Probably it's not the best way. Look up travelogues of people who have been there and travel books, and they'll tell you when the best months are, when the weather is ideal, and when the people are available to interact with, and so forth and so on. Then, by taking advice like that, you'll have a much better trip, won't you? So why would you do that for a trip to Switzerland and not for what politics you should support or what social movements you should join? It's a disaster in self-management and self-growth, and it's certainly a logical disaster. So this is what the Torah is pointing out to you, that your heart and eyes are important. They're not just there to trick you or to tempt you, but you can't allow them alone to determine what the outcome is. You have to set them to an objective standard. I'll give you one example that speaks to me because I did it, and maybe it'll speak to some of you. Think about physical training. You're serious about sports and you want to go through physical training. Do you make up your own exercises? Why not? It's your body. It's your life. Do it your way. How many of these? How many of those? But this guy's been doing this for 20 years. And he studied the books. And he knows that if you do this combination, it has a better outcome than doing that combination. Why should I do it on my own? Nobody who's serious about it does it on his own. He gets a trainer. You join a team, the team has trainers that tell you how to exercise. I myself do fairly serious exercise. And I had occasions when the trainer told me, on the one hand, At that time I was running 3 miles in a half hour. And he said, I think you could do 4.5 miles in 45 minutes. I said, but I'm 60 years old. Should I do that in one jump? I mean, should I do it gradually maybe? He said, no, I think you could do it. So I did it. It wasn't, in fact, so terribly hard. I had no idea how much strength that I had. On the other hand, when I first said to him, no pain, no gain, he said, shut up. That's stupid. Pain means you're in danger of injury. If you get injured, you can't exercise at all. Only moderate pain, and how much depends upon what you're doing, whether it's stretching exercise or whether you're lifting weights. In fact, my trainer, the one that I go to every week, told me he won't let me do certain exercises because he's read about and had bad experience with those exercises. And for me, for my physique and my strengths or weaknesses, that exercise won't be good for me. Isn't it smarter to have a trainer? I mean, are people who hire trainers just throwing their money away? I don't think so. So that's true with training your body. How about training your mind? How about training your values? How about training where you should put your political emphasis? I'll make one remark. I have to leave early today because I have a chassid in Bnei Brak, a grandchild. I'm afraid of not making it. How do you measure whether what you're doing is important? Well, one way you measure it, this is all subjective, one way you measure it is this. How many normal rules am I allowed to break to do this? If it's okay to steal in order to do this, then this must be very important to justify stealing, which ordinarily you wouldn't be able to do. If this allows me to destroy property, it must be very, very important. So when I destroy property, I'm great, because I'm doing something really important. And if I kill somebody, like Luigi Mangione, then I'm the greatest of all. I committed murder. I must be the greatest of all. This is what's called narcissism. The whole thing that's driving it is, how great am I? It has nothing to do with the objective ends that the person is working for. Nothing to do with it. It's how great am I? And the bigger crime you can commit in the name of what you're doing, the implication in your mind is that I must be doing something even greater. And therefore you look for crimes to commit. That's where we are. This is, worthy of a wild 13-year-old. When you get to be 16, you're supposed to outgrow that. We have 50-year-old 16-year-olds who just haven't outgrown it. Okay. So tomorrow